I know I've seen the story of how you got the role in the Apple, but wasn't was was Powderheads first?
Powderheads was second.
Okay.
Yeah, based on the fact that I did the Apple. I went back to Edmonton for Christmas, and I was living in London at that time, and I went back to Edmonton, Alberta, where I was born and raised, and it was the casting director was actually a friend of mine. I mean, I'd sort of hung out in kind of like the music world slash entertainment world and dance and all that stuff in
Right.
Edmonton, and she was casting Powderheads, and yeah, I mean, based on the Apple, I guess I got that thing, which was pretty wild, just kind of going from one to the other because I wasn't even sure really if I was going to pursue this you know biz called show.
Right. And was that seemed like it'd be a totally fun movie to work on.
Did you see Powderheads?
Yeah.
Yeah, literally the second movie I'd ever done, and I was just like, yeah, okay. Yeah, it was fun. It was weird.
Hmm.
Um, it was cold a lot of the time. Like, this stuff. Well, but the good part of it is we really got to use all this great ski equipment, and I
Oh,
grew up skiing.
yeah.
And when we weren't shooting, I'd be like hitting the hill, which I think kind of made them nervous, but it was fun. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. And after that, did you immediately move to Los Angeles?
Well, right after that, I went back to London, and
Oh, right. Yeah.
I was kind of uh, I wasn't sure what I was going to do, if I was going to dance or if I was going to try to act. I had an agent at that time, but I was cast in Nighthawks, the
Oh,
Sylvester
yeah.
Stallone thing. I just had this little role opposite Rutger Hauer, and but it was kind of fun. It was fun to meet Sylvester Stallone, first of all, because he'd done Rocky, and we were all like, oh, it's Sylvester Stallone.
Right.
Um, but yeah, and it was sort of fun. I don't know if you've seen the movie. Have
Yeah.
you seen that one? Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, you've seen it. Um, yeah, I played this little, you know, person in a department store in the perfume section, and Rutger Hauer comes up to me, and he was so freaky. He because he stayed in character. In this movie, he
Oh,
was such an evil character. So as a young actress, I was just like, oh my god, he's scary. But I did get to watch just after. So the scene that I do is with him, and he shoves a bomb under my counter. And I got to watch the special effects explosion from outside on the street, which was kind of cool.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so after you were in Nighthawks, did that kind of cement in your head that you wanted to pursue acting?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess what drew me to Los Angeles was I ended up. How did this work? I'm trying to remember. It was quite a long time ago. But yeah, I thought. I guess I would see what would happen. But I got a call. I was back in Edmonton. I'm trying to remember the order of things, but it had to be after Nighthawks. I went back to Canada
Hmm.
for whatever reason, and I got a call from Menachem Golan, who was the director producer of The Apple, and he wanted me to come to LA and do a movie in LA, and I don't remember the name of the movie, but anyway, so I thought great, and I got ready to go down to LA, and um, uh, at the airport through customs and immigration, they said, so what's taking you to LA? And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to be in a movie. And this was going through American customs and immigration in Edmonton. We did it before we actually got to the US. And he says, well, do you have a work permit for that? And I was like, I'm assuming I do, that I need that. And they're like, yes, you do. You need to have it here. And I didn't have one. And I guess Canon Films was just hoping that I would arrive and they would put me in this movie. And whatever. But no, you needed a work permit. So they wouldn't let me on the plane. And
Oh,
I called him up afterwards. He was so mad at me. He was so angry that I didn't, just not tell. I guess what you were supposed to do is not say anything and just say, I'm going on vacation. But I was young and naive. I didn't know what I was doing. So I didn't make it back down to LA until much later. They wanted to promote the Apple.
yep.
And then, I ended up in Los Angeles eventually. But and then, Menachem introduced me around to lots of different agents and things like that, and managers, and it just started snowballing after that. I got my green card, and the first, I guess, big thing I was cast in is Days of Our Lives.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask about that since you were on that for quite a while.
A couple of years.
Yeah.
It was I think the standard contract was like a 2-year contract. And when my contract was up, they didn't invite me back, but I'd already, while I was doing Days of Our Lives, I got The Last Starfighter.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So at a certain point, I was doing not only Days of Our Lives, but The Last Starfighter at the same time. So that was kind of fun.
And this is probably obvious, but do you have a preference between doing soap opera or doing, like, what was it like doing that in comparison to film or TV?
Yeah, so much harder. I mean, soap operas are crazy. Because you have to, like, for instance, in a movie, it's say 90 minutes long, and they they do it much faster nowadays. But it used to be a couple of months of shooting for a 90-minute film, and then a soap opera. Days of Our Lives, anyway, was an hour show that we had to shoot in a day.
Yep.
So if you had a very strong storyline, you could be 50 pages of dialogue. And that's a lot of dialogue to memorize. And you really have to memorize it. They don't do like second takes and things in soap operas. They really want you to get it the first time. They don't really care that much about how great your performance is.
Right.
They just want to get it done and move on. You have, in the format was, you'd arrive, you'd have a read through on the set, and then you'd have a dress rehearsal, I guess, or a blocking. And then after lunch, you would have a dress rehearsal, and then you would shoot it. And I found it really super challenging.
Yeah.
There are career soap opera actors who've been on it for years and years and years. And I think it becomes sort of second nature. You know your storyline, you know basically what the writers are going to write for you.
Right.
Your character, you have it down pat. I never got to that point. So I kind of struggled. So when I didn't go back, things were starting in other ways, but I was okay with that.
Yeah. And right before you got the role in Days of Our Lives, wouldn't it technically been first that you auditioned for The Outsiders?
Oh, I guess that is true.
Yeah.
It would have, well, you probably know the timeline better than I do. Yeah, I got to audition for that, which was, again, I remember I was reading with Tom Cruise was in there. Yeah, all the hot young people were auditioning for that thing. And I did end up getting a call back, but they also sort of encouraged us to be spontaneous. So at one point, I forget what the dialogue was, but I felt like Tom Cruise had kind of insulted me, or whoever it was I was having dialogue with. And so I had a glass of water and I just flung it. We were sitting like tiered, and I just flung the water in whoever it was at face. I remember Tom Cruise because I thought, ooh, this guy's cute. He hadn't really done anything of significance yet, but I think. Right. But oh boy, he was driven. He was a driven guy, and he was really little. He's not 5'8". I'm 5'6", and maybe we were the same height. I'm not sure, but I thought he was pretty cute. I walked out with him and stuff, but he never asked me out. So, Oh, well.
Well, you can on the one of the most recent DVD releases of that, you can actually watch the footage of you auditioning with him, and then Julie Pekarsky is right next to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember them asking for permission to be able to, actually, I think originally they aired it on some talk show and they asked for permission. So I knew it was out there somewhere.
Did you all the other big actors that were in that movie, did you know any of them or like become friends with any of them?
Of The Outsiders?
Yeah.
The Outsiders? No, because I didn't end up getting it. So
Okay.
yeah.
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 And then let's see, around that
A
same
lot
time.
of them turned out to be big actors in
Right.
Hollywood.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
And then you were in around that same time too, you were in a TV movie I really like called Killer in the Family.
Oh yes, that was crazy. That was really fun. I really enjoyed that. Again, the kids that were Eric Stoltz and, well, you have all the names.
Yeah.
That were in that just also became really, ingrained in Hollywood for sure. Robert Mitchum was the father, right?
Yep.
It was a really cool experience just because, again, one of my first jobs in Los Angeles, and just it wasn't a huge role, but it was kind of a fun role for me. And we shot it in Salt Lake City, Utah, I think. But I enjoyed that. Yeah, very much.
Did you like being, because there was another one the year after that called Intent to Kill. Did you like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those, back in the 80s, they did lots and lots of TV movies, and a lot of them were really, really good.
Yeah.
That's the one with Holly Hunter, right?
Yep.
All the titles kind of sound the same after a while. Holly Hunter played my little sister, and I'm sort of the older, pretty cheerleader sister, and she's the younger one, and she's sort of jealous and everything. Gosh, I haven't seen that one in so long. But again, I really feel like these TV movies that were made back then, not only were they original, but they were good. They were good, and they attracted really, really good actors,
Right.
which was great for me to be around those kind of people.
Yeah. That's one thing I think is so interesting about a lot of actors in that time period is that so many started out doing things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually are good movies.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. For me, it was a fantastic time, but for a lot of like big established actors, like, Rod Steiger and Anthony Hopkins and things, they were sort of having done a ton of work. They were sort of struggling in Los Angeles to find really good roles, and they ended up, doing things like, which I was in, Hollywood Wives, and
Yeah.
Well, I did a movie called Sins, and they would take these roles and they probably get paid very well. There's also tons of money at that time. They probably got paid really well just to sort of sustain them until they got back into sort of the flow of the really good roles.
Mm-hmm. And were you kind of, after you were getting those early roles like that in darker productions, were you kind of just focusing on a specific kind of role, or were you just taking anything that you liked?
I was pretty much taking, anything I liked. Mm-hmm. I think that's a good way of putting it. I got a little bit of credibility in Los Angeles, so I was being offered some pretty good stuff. There was another one, the names are unfortunate, but I did another one called Passion in Paradise, where again, Rod Steiger was in it, and Armand Assante,
yep.
Terrific actors, which was, again, another great experience. But really, really good actors doing these television movies, and I was fortunate enough to be involved with them.
Yep. And in relation to auditioning for The Outsiders, were there any other really big movies that you auditioned for in the 80s?
Yes, I'm going to say yes. That I didn't necessarily get.
Was it any like?
I off the top of my head, I can't. You sort of. especially when you're auditioning, you have no idea what's going to happen with these
Right.
movies, and some become incredibly successful and some just kind of disappear. And so when they finally, I mean, you just have to, after auditioning, you just have to kind of let go. You just have to kind of let go of the thing and move forward. But it's always hard. I mean, most of this business is rejection. That's just the fact. I mean, 90% of the time, it's rejection. So when you finally get a role, I mean, unless you're a seriously established actor who can, you know, either produce and do whatever it is they want or whatever. But I have never really gotten to that level. I mean, I touched on it a little bit in the 80s and early 90s, but then when I moved to New York, everything kind of sort of, people thought I'd quit the business. I hadn't quit the business. I just moved to New York and I raised a couple of kids and all that junk. So that happens a lot to women, I think, female actors, unless they have incredibly sort of understanding people around them. Anyway.
This is kind of a rumor, I guess, but it's a long-standing thing that basically every well-known younger actor auditioned for Grease 2. Were you ever a part of that?
I auditioned for Grease 1.
Really?
I think. I remember auditioning for one of the Greases. Maybe it was Grease 2.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Grease 2. Okay. I think you're right.
Do you
I did. What's that?
Do you remember much about that?
I do remember the dance audition portion of it, and I think I probably got to callbacks, but I don't remember very much about it.
Okay. Yeah. And then one of my favorite movies is Mischief.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I can't believe that didn't become some huge, well-known movie, because it's just, I think it's perfect, and everybody I've watched it with just thinks it should be as well known as like The Breakfast Club or I'm sure was that
that was a really fun that was really a super fun movie to do, because by that time I sort of had figured out what it was I was doing, you know. As an actor you kind of like struggle for a while just trying to find your footing, and then by the time we did Mischief, also it was a really young cast, so we all got along really well. I'm still really good friends with Doug McKeon and Chris Nash. And well, as you know, probably Kelly Preston passed away this last year, which was so incredibly sad. She was really a lovely, lovely person. This was one of her very first movies, and she was very sweet and really funny. And she's always sort of maintained that reputation from what I've read, but really, really sweet girl. But yeah, it was sort of like when we weren't shooting, we were joking around and doing crazy things like, I don't know, I guess it was Doug and Kelly probably who had this ongoing thing where they would sort of steal each other's possessions and you would find them hanging somewhere. And kind of the apex of that was, I don't know if it was Doug or Kelly, took all their stuff from their hotel room, and it was one of these high-rise kind of hotel rooms, and hung it all out the window. So when you drove up, you could see this sort of sack of stuff. Oh. It was fun. I mean, it was all in good fun. And we all really got along well. On the weekends, we'd go off canoeing and stuff. So I got a message. I guess I should turn my ding off. I don't know how to do that though. Yeah, so that was a great movie to be a part of, and I think it turned out really well as well. You know, we all had a great time. I think it shows in the movie itself. I think the story is sweet. I think the feel of the 50s is authentic.
Yep.
And it's just it's a good story. You know, it's a good story, and it's about the characters. And one of the things I think is missing, which I've said many times before, is sort of the intimacy and the character-driven aspect of movies. So many of the big movies are just like special effects and explosions and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And you know, the excuse is, well, the audience these days, that's what they want to see. Well, that's what they want to see because that's all they're exposed to, you know? I mean, kids used to be affected when, I mean, human beings haven't changed that much. It's what you expose them to.
Yeah, totally. Did you stay in touch with Kelly?
Oh, you cut out a little.
Oh,
Cut out. Sorry.
Did you stay in touch with Kelly?
Kelly Preston?
Yeah.
No, no, I don't. I mean, she was in, you know, John Travolta world and
Right.
all that. So
Yeah.
I don't even think anybody could get a hold of her, really. I'm sure, oh, she had tons of friends, but no, we didn't keep in touch. In fact, Chris and Doug and I sort of reunited maybe as long as 10 years ago, but so well after Mischief was made.
Yeah.
But by that time, Kelly was in another stratosphere.
Right. And did you, on set, whatever, did you interact much with Jamie Gertz?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. Jamie was great. She was great. Just a lot of fun, super funny. I mean, you can imagine some of the work that she's done really is a reflection of who she is, sort of quirky and funny and really smart.
Right.
So yeah, we all definitely interacted and got along great.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it. And then another movie that people, I don't think, ever ask you about that I thought was cool too is Scenes from the Goldmine.
Oh yeah. Well, again, I mean, you know, what's so much fun about being an actor is you get to kind of live vicariously through these characters, right?
Yep.
And I have always loved music and loved singing. And I grew up in a household where for some reason we just all sang all the time. My parents not so much, but I have two older brothers and me, and we used to just go around singing at the top of our lungs. You know, I would come home from school and put on the record player, you know, Eagles or whatever it was at the time, and sing if I was alone. I have two older brothers, so they were probably off at college or something, and my mother was working at the university, so that was like, I mean, I should have been a musician. I was involved with musicians for quite a while, and I just loved it. But so the point is, when Scenes from the Goldmine came along, it was like living a fantasy for me, being this like rock and roll. I mean, I've watched that actually fairly recently, and you know, very 80s, very serious 80s,
Yep.
hairstyles and clothes, a little unfortunate there, but I really, really enjoyed doing that. And Cameron Dye, who plays the lead guy,
Yep.
He and I are still really good friends. So yeah, I mean, there's certain movies that I did, especially when I was younger, that I really remained good friends with a lot of the cast.
And did you do all your own singing in that too?
I did, which was incredible. I got to go into a recording studio and do the whole thing, really pretend I was a serious musician.
Was that easy for you?
Well, I mean, it was new for me, so I wouldn't say it was easy, and I practiced a lot, because I really didn't want to screw up.
Yeah.
I don't have the most amazing voice on the planet Earth, so I was a little nervous about that, but I think they did a great job, you know, doing whatever it is they do in the studio. And it was so much fun for me. I just loved it.
And that same year, you would have been in Dudes too.
Dudes, I didn't sing, but well, see, that's another thing that was so much fun for me is I also love horseback riding.
Oh yeah.
So for me, I was in heaven once again. I mean, it's like, I actually think that I look for projects where I can transform myself into a character that I have fantasized about being, you know? So on that one, I got to shoot a gun, which I learned how to do, and twirl it and get it into my holster. and how you shoot at, at the bottles or whatever on a fence, how to do it properly. And then I got to do some, serious horseback riding. And I actually broke my arm on that movie.
Oh, was it from like falling off a horse or something?
Well, yes, actually. So there's a scene where I'm sort of running at top speed across a field towards the camera.
Yep.
And the direction was, just full out, right past the camera. Don't slow down when you get to the camera, just ride full out. So I did and loved it, so much fun. But somebody had parked a Jeep just behind the camera, like their car. And so I saw it there, and it was maybe like 20 feet from the camera, and he was sitting there watching the shot. And I had to run directly towards him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, okay, I'll run by the camera, and then I will just pull the horse off to the side so we avoid, running straight. Well, What happened was the horse decided to, take his own cue.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kind of stopped on a dime. I went forward into this Jeep or whatever it was. I hit it with my arm, and everybody, of course, freaked out. I was on the ground. I felt okay. I mean, I didn't hit my face or anything like that, which is good, or my head. But they were like, you should go to the doctor and check it out. And I'm like, I'm fine. But they insisted. So I went to the trailer, and I was changing from my costume. And at one point, it was my right arm. At one point, I was just kind of stabilizing myself on the counter with my arm. And it just went, this explosion of pain.
Right.
And I realized then there was something wrong. So we got there, and sure enough, my ulna, which is one of the bones, was completely like separated like that. And I had to have a cast. We hadn't quite finished shooting the movie, so I had a cast that you could take off and put back on, and I had lots of painkillers, but there was just a couple of scenes that I had to do without the cast, so that was good.
It seemed like your chemistry with John Cryer was just really fun too, and yeah.
He's very cute, and same with John. I mean, we're still in touch. I got back in touch with him fairly recently. I go back and forth to LA from New York as much as I can, just to kind of stay in touch with all the people there and just stay in. Because when I left, I wasn't really involved for a few years, and so it was kind of like starting over again. But I've been working hard at doing that, and pretty successfully, I think. But anyway, a few years ago, somehow I got in touch with John Cryer, and we got together. And then, Penelope Spheris had this sort of screening at Penelope Spheris is the director.
Yeah,
you know that. She had a screening at sort of a retrospective of the movies that she's made, starting with the movie she did while she was studying filmmaking at UCLA. And they did Dudes. They screened Dudes, and John and I were there. Daniel Roebuck was there. A whole bunch of the actors that were involved. I don't think Flea was there, or the other musician. Anyway, there was a couple of serious musicians. I love the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I love them, and so that was sort of fun working with him. He was great. He played a great character.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was another sort of connection, and Daniel Roebuck and I have been in touch for quite a while. Oh, well, again, going out to LA, I would sort of reconnect with these people, and or see them at conventions or something like that. But I always like trying to either stay in touch or reconnect with, people that I like and respect and are in the business. Yeah.
And what's the what's the story of Weekend at Bernie's? How you got that?
Well, it was a regular audition with Ted Kotcheff and Jonathan Silverman. So it was sort of, you know, past just having to audition for the casting director. I read with Jonathan Silverman as Ted watched. And I think it was just the three of us in the room. And I don't know what it was. I forgot his name or something. And I remember leaving the audition thinking I completely screwed it up. I was just like devastated. I called my manager and I said, oh my God, I've completely screwed up this audition. I don't know if you can do something. Maybe I can go back and try again and all this other stuff. And then to my surprise, I got the offer. So that was a really interesting experience. We shot in North Carolina. So North Carolina was supposed to be the Hamptons, where the big house was. And they built that house from scratch and just stuck it on the top of the sand. It wasn't an existing house.
Wow, yeah.
So when you go behind a door, like upstairs, it's like nothing there. But that was a lot of fun, except that I didn't really work that much in the movie, but they kept me out there. They just kept me in North Carolina. So I had a lot of downtime. And by the time I got to actually work, I was so excited to work. And you know, these two guys, Anthony and Jonathan, were just in everything. They were in every scene. So by the time I would get to work, they were exhausted. They were just exhausted. And I'm like, yeah, let's go, woohoo! I think I must have been like a little tsetse fly around them. Andrew McCarthy made it clear that I annoyed him.
Oh, really?
Put it that way. But Jonathan Silverman and I got along really well. He's a super sweet guy. I mean, we had so much fun. The scenes that we shot together, we really had fun doing them.
So you didn't get along well with Andrew at all, really?
It wasn't that we didn't get along. We just, I just don't think he was that interested in getting to know me, put it that way.
Before I move on to the following decade, throughout the 80s, do you have a favorite single movie that you did in the 80s? If you could pick one.
You know, I've loved working on all the movies that I've worked on for different reasons. Some maybe more than others, but you know, what is interesting to me, and I say fun a lot because it is fun for me. I can get really sort of intellectual in my process and that whole thing, but ultimately it's kind of boring, and ultimately when I sort of figure out a character or work on a movie, I just love it, and I'm sorry, it's fun. So but there are times where you work with certain actors and they're kind of jerks to work with, you know. It's just, some actors have reputations for just being kind of difficult or mean or whatever it is they are, and not easy to get along with. And I'm just easygoing, and I think that sometimes annoys them because I'm not serious enough or whatever you're supposed to be as an actor. But probably one of my favorite movies was The Last Starfighter, because it was the first movie that I did in Los Angeles.
Yep.
And it was also my entree into movies, like, you know, American movies, and my exit from Days of Our Lives.
Yep.
And it was a small, just lovely story, you know, that was really a labor of love, I think, for the director and the writer and the producer. They wanted a couple of relative unknowns. You know, they didn't want the Brat Pack or whatever it was back then. And they wanted to just try to create this really sweet, down-to-earth story about this kid that finds himself in an extraordinary situation and how he handles it.
Right.
And I think they were very successful at doing that. And Nick Castle, the director, was just lovely to work with. I mean, there's a tone that's set on the set, and it trickles down from anyone from the producer to the director or the big movie star. In this movie, nobody had some sort of agenda for themselves. You know, they just wanted to make it the best thing they could. So you really felt that when you were working.
Right.
And again, Lance and I are great friends. Nick Castle and I are still good friends. You know, it was just one of those things where it was a great sort of collaboration and kismet between everybody.
What about when you were auditioning for projects then? Were there any other big actresses that you seemed to always be up against?
Well, they're definitely like well, they're not big actors anymore, but people like Cynthia Gibb or Alexandra Paul, we all were a certain type that was similar. Really big, let me think. Yeah, I used to see, you know, we were all on sort of the same level, and you used to see people over and over again in auditions.
Yeah.
So I can't remember super famous people that I was, you know, if it was somebody super famous, they were getting the job.
Yeah.
So, you know, probably weren't auditioning a whole bunch of, you know, other actors to compete against them.
Did you ever see Michelle Pfeiffer at auditions or anything?
I didn't see Michelle Pfeiffer, but I was, that I recall, but I was very much aware of her. And we're about the same age, and she was just like this diamond glowing person. I mean, she just seemed, people loved her.
Right.
You know, she was destined to greatness for sure.
And I was just wondering, since you're originally from Canada and you came to LA around the same time, did you know Dorothy Stratten at all?
No, I didn't know Dorothy Stratten.
Okay. So did you ever meet her or anything? Okay.
No, Dorothy Stratten, who died, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I was up for the movie, one of the movies that portrayed her, and what's her name?
Heather Hemingway.
Well, no, I didn't audition for that version.
Oh, the Jamie Lee Curtis.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah.
So I remember, so she was up for it, as was I, and she came up to me and she said, you know, you should get this role. And I was like, why? She said, you look just like her. She, of course, just ended up getting it, but I thought that was really cool. You know, I mean, there are actors and actresses who will just, they don't want to let you in. They don't want you to know anything that they're doing. I mean, there's actors who will like cover up if they're reading a script or something. My husband had this experience at a gym in Los Angeles, or an actor who we used to audition for the same things all the time, saw him and just covered up the script that she was reading at the gym because she didn't want me to find out about it, you know, which is holy moly.
Right.
And there's Jamie Lee Curtis, you know, in the audition going, you should get this role. It shouldn't be me. So, yeah, it's a very, very competitive business.
Right. I think that's pretty interesting to hear that, because I think it would have made more sense for you to have been in that TV movie about her, since, like you definitely look more like her than Jamie does.
Right. Yeah. But you know, she probably had a little more cred than I did at the time.
Hmm.
I remember being pretty new to the business at that time. So, you know, it would have been interesting, but
Hmm. So in the 90s, what are some of the favorite things that you worked on? Because there was stuff like Hearts Are Wild and uh, The Psychic and stuff like that.
right, those are fun. Hearts Are Wild was actually the first series that I did. I did lots of pilots that didn't make it to series, but Hearts Are Wild was the first series. It was sort of like a Love Boat in Vegas.
Yep.
And then they had all the, you know, big celebrities come to Vegas and have a little storyline there. And I was basically the entertainment director, something like that. It was fun. It was weird. We were put up in Caesar's Palace, so
Yep.
yeah, and the rooms in Caesar Palace are strange. The beds are round, and then there's a mirror above you, and then there's a hot tub right next to the bed. So it wasn't exactly like going home at night, but and it was interesting, you know, being surrounded by gambling, and some of the cast and crew kind of got into the gambling, which can get very, very dangerous.
Yeah. Right.
But John Polito and I stayed very good friends.
Hmm.
Yeah, and he passed away several years ago, which was very sad. Really, really terrific character actor and great guy.
And what was your experience on the Outer Limits?
I did a few of those actually. They shot them up in Canada.
Yep.
Yeah, so I did one in Vancouver with Tom Arnold. It was kind of, the thing about those shows is they sort of project what might happen in the future, you know? Tom Arnold hires like this robot to kind of help out in the house, and the robot starts taking over kind of all the responsibilities, and I'm sort of sinking into this sort of alcoholic stupor, and the robot ends up calling me on it, and I'm like, what do you mean drinking? And anyway, it's sort of interesting. It's out there, but it's kind of a commentary on, you know, how the future, you know, I mean, look, this IA stuff or AI stuff is getting pretty sophisticated, and to me a little bit scary, you know. Right. So that's sort of a version of that. I did another one where I wanted to have the perfect baby, and at that time there was a way. It was kind of like, you know, behind the scenes. It wasn't legal, but you could get access to this drug that you could choose what your baby was going to look like: a boy, a girl, beautiful, blue-eyed, all the rest of it. Another really interesting concept, and not too, you know, out of this world, really. I mean, you see that kind of stuff being developed all the time. And of course, there's horrific consequences, or can be horrific consequences. Mm-hmm. That was a really sort of interesting show to do too. I enjoyed that stuff.
Mm. And in the 90s, were there any other, just like in the 80s, were there any other big projects that you got to audition for?
Yes. No, I guess so. Let's see. I did do a pretty fun project. I'm trying to remember the name of it now. Oh Lordy, I need to get my IMDb out. But it was called, what was it called? Annie's Past. Something Past.
That's right.
That was. I enjoyed doing that movie a lot. I I thought it was really just a challenging, you know, I was the main character and I had this whole history of stuff, and it was just a complicated character and really interesting to kind of delve into. And it's when we had our daughter, she was a few months old. We were still living in California at that time. She's in the movie. She's an extra.
Oh.
But Out of Annie's Past, that's what it's called. That was a good, a really interesting, challenging, and fun movie to do.
I thought it was interesting for me specifically when you came back to acting in the like late 2000s. That the first thing you were in was The Girl Next Door, which is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah. That was interesting because they offered me the role of the next door neighbor, the aunt, the really horrible person.
Yeah.
And I was like, thank you, but I can't do that. I won't do that character. So I just sort of played the neighbor that didn't really know all the horrible stuff that was going on. It's interesting though, I went to a screening of that one and people were literally walking out because it was so kind of violent and creepy. So yeah, I tend to try to avoid those kind of movies. I did with this, was it the same person? Yes, I think so. The Attic, I did a kind of a horror movie called The Attic with Elizabeth I wanted to say Elizabeth Shue, but it's not Elizabeth Shue. Come on, you know all this stuff.
I can look at, yeah.
Yeah, look at that for me. I should be looking this stuff up too. She's
Elizabeth Moss. Yeah, she's famous.
Elizabeth Moss, of course. And this was in between like West Wing and everything else.
Yep.
So I knew who she was, but it was sort of in retrospect, wow, it was really cool to work with her. So that was fun. Yeah, The Attic. Yeah, it was and John Savage played my, which was also, I mean, iconic actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those, you're right. You're exactly right. The Girl Next Door was sort of my, you know what, it wasn't the same producer, Tom, it was a different producer. And then I did The Girl Next Door, then I did The Attic, which was, and they were both shot in the New York area. Yeah, that kind of was my reintroduction to actually working again, which was good.
Even I can tie this into something you just said. Even back in the 80s, were you rejecting stuff very often?
Probably on occasion, I'm sure. You know, there's, you get, when you get to a certain level where they're actually offering you things, you know, there's usually something in there that you're probably not that interested in doing, and also didn't really have to do. I did turn down, when I started doing like The Last Starfighter and Night of the Comet and Mischief, I was offered a lot of television stuff, which I turned down because at that time, there wasn't as much crossover.
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of regret it in a way, but I was doing movies at that time. So yeah, I probably mostly I turned down like television offers.
What about, were there any like big horror movies from them that you were asked to be a part of?
You mean besides Night of the Comet?
Yeah.
Probably. I'm sorry, I don't remember specifically, you know, offers. I really don't. It was a long time ago.
Hmm. And what about, I didn't ask this, but your experience being on Night Riders?
Night Riders, yeah, with the yeah, um, that was great. That may have been my very first or second job in LA.
Right, yeah.
The Hoff. Uh, what's that?
Oh, just, yeah, laughing.
Yeah. So of course, you know, I knew the show really well.
Hmm.
Um, it was a hugely popular show. So getting on that was really fun. And then getting to sort of sit in the car was really cool because, you know, it was sort of mysterious. So to learn the tricks behind that thing. Uh, um, and, you know, David Hasselhoff was just so cute.
Hmm.
It was really, you know, it was sort of like I had this intro into all the handsome actors of Hollywood. It was really, really fun. And I think I had a boyfriend at the time, but he did sort of say, kind of, you know, ask me if I wanted to go out, but I was like, oh, I have a boyfriend. Darn it. So that didn't happen, but he was very, very sweet. He was really nice.
And like stuff like your interaction with Tom Cruise and Jamie Lee Curtis on those movie sets. Are there any other stories like that where you had interactions with big people when you were just starting out that you can remember?
Well, you know, people that I worked with, but probably one of my favorites was The Last Starfighter with Robert Preston,
Yep.
where I met him. We were doing pickup shots or something at the studio, and as I was coming in, he was leaving, and we were introduced because we didn't work together and we weren't on the set together at the same time. And he took my hand and he kissed it, and I was just like, he was really, he sort of seemed to glow, you know. He was one of the iconic actors, and I'd known his work from Victor Victoria uh, to the what's it called, the Dance Man, or but he, you know, that role in The Last Starfighter was created for him.
Yep.
The Music Man, the Dance Man, the Music Man.
Hmm.
And the character, yeah, it was for him, and the character from the Music Man was kind of like what his character in Last Starfighter was meant to be.
So that's the last thing I can ask is, looking back on your career and older new fans, what do you want your legacy to be?
Wow. I don't know. I hope that I've provided some entertainment. You know, I seem to, you know, have this kind of group of fans that are so attached to things like The Last Starfighter and Night of the Comet and Mischief and
Yep.
Weekly Journeys. And I'm so grateful that I was a part of that. And they were good movies, you know, and there's nothing about them that I'm embarrassed about or anything like that. You know, if that is my legacy, I'm really happy. You go to a convention and you'll meet these 45-year-old men that are like, oh, you were my first crush and things like that. And then they've got their kids with them, introducing them to these old movies. And some of the time they're like, yeah, it's really good. Or some of the time they're like, it's really old fashioned. Yeah, it's torturing me. I got this message from, I do this thing called Cameo.
Yep.
And I got a message from this person saying their dad introduced them to The Last Starfighter, and they both like it so much. Would I send a message to them? And so that I think that's really neat that there are
Right.
movies out there that you are attached to in a way that you really want your children to be a part of them as well. So yeah, I'm grateful, it's gratifying, and I just, have really enjoyed my time as an actor, and I'm pursuing it still, and I really want to get into directing more. I'm developing 3 projects at the moment, and so we'll see what happens with that, but that's something that's always really interested me too. So
Yeah.
keep your eyes open for that. And
Yeah.
join me on Facebook, Catherine Mary Stewart, or
Yeah.
I'll do a cameo thing for you guys. And all the other social media stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not great at it because I'm kind of old, but I try to keep up, because if it wasn't for the fans, actors wouldn't be actors.
Right. Yeah, because I just a little while ago, I'm not sure how well you know her, but I did an interview with Joyce Heiser.
Joyce, what's her last name?
Heiser.
Oh, I'm not sure who that is.
Okay.
Should I know her?
Do you know just one of the guys? Do you know that movie?
I don't.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, she was kind of like you in the sense that she was in a lot of 80s stuff that has a bunch of big fan following today still. And yeah,
Amazing.
I'm just, I mean, I'm only 23, but I've been a fan of all this stuff since I was like 12. So it's just really surprising to me to be in this opportunity now. So
Good.
I'm really,
Well,
really,
good luck to you, and thank you. Thank you for being there.
yeah. Thanks. I'm glad that I got to ask you things that I don't think I really ever saw you get asked about publicly.
All right, cool. Well, good luck getting lots more people.
I'll be sure to send you the link to once
Oh,
I
yeah,
get
sure.
it uploaded. Yeah. Hey, thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.